Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Burials are beginning in New Zealand as the country mourns the loss of 50 Muslim worshippers gunned down by a white supremacist Friday in the deadliest attack in New Zealand's history. The worshippers killed in the Christchurch massacre came from around the world. Most of them were immigrants or refugees who'd come to New Zealand seeking safety. 6 Pakistanis, 4 Jordanians, 4 Egyptians, and at least 3 Bangladeshis are among the dead. The Palestinian Authority's foreign ministry said 6 of the victims were of Palestinian origin. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has been calling for unity and support for Muslim communities following the horrific attack. On Friday, she was asked about her phone call with President Trump.
Spoke with Donald Trump this morning. He sought to call us directly. He very much wished for his condolences to be passed on to New Zealand. He asked what offer of support the United States could provide. My message was sympathy and love for all Muslim communities.
Prime Minister Ardern has been widely praised for her response to the attacks. In the immediate aftermath, the youngest female head of state in the world vowed to reform gun laws, visited with Muslim communities in New Zealand wearing a hijab as a sign of respect. She also recently pledged to never use the terror suspect's name, instead calling on people to say the names of those killed in the attacks. We'll have more on the Muslim community in New Zealand after headlines. The Daily Beast is reporting the House Judiciary Committee will hold a hearing in the coming weeks on the rise of white nationalism, hate crimes, and hate speech in the U.S. The Southern Poverty Law Center found membership in white nationalist groups increased by nearly 50% last year. Government agencies, including the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, have warned white nationalist attacks are on the rise and pose a major domestic threat. Meanwhile, a recent Huffington Post investigation has found 7 current members of the U.S. military belong to white nationalist group Identity Europa, which was founded by a former Marine and was involved in organizing the deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017. The military says it's investigating those service members. In Mozambique, President Filipe Nyusi said Monday the death toll from tropical cyclone Idai could reach over 1,000 people. The devastating cyclone brought winds of 110 miles per hour and massive flooding to Mozambique and neighboring Zimbabwe and Malawi from Thursday to Saturday in what Mozambique's environment minister called the biggest natural disaster the country has ever faced. Aid agencies warned Idai destroyed 90% of the low-lying port city of Beira, which has a population of over 500,000 people. Meanwhile, in other climate news, massive flooding has forced the closing of much of the Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. Flooding submerged as many as 60 structures on the base, which is the headquarters of the U.S. Strategic Command. In January, the Pentagon released a report warning climate change could threaten 2/3 of the nation's military installations. In October, Hurricane Michael severely damaged Tyndall Air Base in Florida. Vice President Pence is visiting Nebraska today. And the New York Times is reporting Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman approved a covert campaign to silence opponents and critics of the Saudi government. The campaign, which started in 2017 and whose acts were carried out by a group known as the Saudi Rapid Intervention Group, included surveillance, forcible repatriation, kidnapping, and torture of dissidents. Some of the covert missions were reportedly carried out by the same individuals involved in the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul last October. A top aide to the Crown Prince, Saud al-Qahtani, is said to have overseen the campaign. The group is also believed to be involved in the jailing and abuse of at least a dozen women activists who campaigned against the kingdom's ban on female drivers. One of those activists attempted suicide. In more news about Saudi Arabia, Turkey said last week that Interpol had issued a red notice for the arrest of 20 suspects in journalist Jamal Khashoggi's killing, including Saud al-Qahtani. A United Nations commission presented its full report on Israeli crimes in Gaza to the Human Rights Council Monday. The panel called on Israel to stop using live ammunition against unarmed protesters and investigate the shooting of thousands of Palestinians. This is Santiago Canton, chair of the UN War Crimes Commission, speaking in Geneva.
We believe that in situations of crowd control and in situations that we deem to be civilian in nature, if there are individuals in the crowds that may be legitimate target, you still cannot shoot at the crowd because you may shoot or kill innocent individual.
A summary of the report released last month found Israeli forces may have committed war crimes and crimes against humanity by targeting protesters in Gaza with lethal force, including children, journalists, and the disabled. The report looked at Israel's bloody response to weekly Great March of Return demonstrations launched by Palestinians in Gaza nearly a year ago, targeting Israel's heavily militarized fence. It found Israeli forces killed 189 Palestinians, almost all of them with live ammunition. In Britain, the Speaker of the House of Commons dealt a new blow Monday to Prime Minister Theresa May by barring another vote in Parliament on her Brexit agreement, just 11 days before the UK is set to leave the European Union.
What the government cannot legitimately do is to resubmit to the House the same proposition or substantially the same proposition as that of last week, which was rejected by 149 votes.
That was Speaker John Bercow. Britain may now request a Brexit extension from European leaders. France has announced tough new measures on Yellow Vest protests as the anti-government demonstrations entered their fourth month over the weekend, marked by clashes with the police, nearly 200 arrests and damage to businesses by some protesters. Police used tear gas and water cannons on crowds in Paris. On Monday, Prime Minister Edouard Philippe banned the yellow vest from the Champs-Élysées and certain neighborhoods, as well as announced the shutdown of any protests that included violent or, quote, ultra-radicalized groups. The Prime Minister also said the Paris police chief would be replaced and police officers would be granted more autonomy. In the Netherlands, authorities have arrested a man suspected of shooting passengers on a tram in the city of Utrecht, killing 3 people and injuring 5 others. 37-year-old Gökmen Tanis, who is originally from Turkey, reportedly has a criminal record, including a possible rape charge. One of the victims of the shooting may be the gunman's ex-wife, according to some reports. Dutch authorities initially believed the attack may have a terrorist motive, but later said it was no longer being treated as such. Another Mexican journalist and radio host has been killed at his home in Sonora, which lies on the U.S.-Mexico border, neighboring Arizona. An unidentified gunman shot and killed Santiago Barroso on Friday, making him the 4th known reporter to be killed in Mexico this year. Shortly before his murder, Barroso reported on smugglers attempting to bring a group of migrants across the border. Human rights and press freedom groups are calling on the Mexican government to investigate the killing and put in place measures to better protect journalists. British nonprofit Article 19 finds there is a 99% impunity rate for crimes against journalists in Mexico. Representatives of Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido took control of multiple diplomatic properties in the U.S. Monday with the support of the U.S. State Department, including the consulate in New York and 2 diplomatic buildings in Washington, D.C. The government of sitting President Nicolas Maduro, which cut diplomatic ties with the U.S. over its support for his ouster, called on U.S. officials to, quote, reverse this forcible occupation. In Nicaragua, police arrested over 100 people over the weekend after protesters took to the streets demanding the government of President Daniel Ortega release all political prisoners and following Friday's release of 50 prisoners amidst an ongoing crackdown on journalists and government critics. Last month, Ortega vowed to reopen talks with political opponents. This is a protester speaking in Managua Saturday.
We are calling for freedom for all our political prisoners. The government has accepted that there are political prisoners. The only crime that they committed was to raise their flag and their voices for Nicaragua.
The House Judiciary Committee said it received tens of thousands of documents from some of the 81 individuals and groups contacted as part of the committee's sweeping probe into President Trump and his businesses over possible obstruction of justice, corruption, and other crimes and abuses of power. The committee did not reveal specifically who handed over records, but Judiciary Chair Gerald Nadler told MSNBC Monday that former Trump campaign advisor Stephen Bannon was one of the people who handed over a few thousand documents. Meanwhile, the Daily Beast is reporting Trump's legal team told Congressmember Nadler they would not be handing over any requested documents. The House panel has said they would likely issue subpoenas to anyone who refused to comply with their request. A new report by Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting found the U.S. government operates secret shelters to detain some unaccompanied migrant minors. The facilities, which are outside of the regular Office of Refugee Resettlement Network, reportedly specialize in housing youth with mental or behavioral challenges. The practice may be in violation of a long-standing agreement that says the government must provide lawyers with accurate information on the whereabouts of all children in its care. It's unknown how many such sites exist, but Reveal identified at least 5 locations where at least 16 immigrant children are detained, some as young as 9 years old. At least one of the facilities has previously been accused of numerous violations, including sexual and physical abuse. At a town hall Monday night, Senator and 2020 hopeful Elizabeth Warren called for voting reforms, including doing away with the Electoral College.
Every vote matters. And the way we can make that happen is that we can have national voting, and that means get rid of the Electoral College.
Senator Warren was responding to a question from Rukia Lumumba, activist and former campaign manager for Chokwe Lumumba, her brother, the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. In Dallas, Texas, former President George W. Bush and First Lady Laura Bush attended a naturalization ceremony in Dallas in a rare public appearance. Bush said, quote, "Amidst all the complications of policy, may we never forget that immigration is a blessing and a strength." Bush's comments came as President Trump signed his first veto Friday, overturning Congress's vote on blocking his national emergency to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. Iowa Congressmember and supporter of white nationalist Steve King posted an image to Facebook over the weekend showing 2 figures formed by red and blue states in a fight with the words, "One side has about 8 trillion bullets, while the other side doesn't know which bathroom to use." Steve King added the caption, "Wonder who would win." The bathroom reference is an apparent mocking of transgender rights. The image was later removed from King's page. The Congressmember was stripped of his House committee assignments earlier this year over his support for white supremacy. And 2 U.S. veterans for peace are being held in Ireland after protesting U.S. warplanes refueling there. Military planes regularly refuel at Shannon Airport before continuing on to U.S. wars in the Middle East. Veterans for Peace Ken Mayers and Tara Kauf, currently in Limerick prison, could be held up for up to 2 years pre-trial after entering the airfield carrying a large banner that said, U.S. veterans say respect Irish neutrality, U.S. war machine out of Shannon Airport, Veterans for Peace. Ed Horgan, coordinator of Irish Veterans for Peace, said this process is a clear attempt to punish the 2 Veterans for Peace activists before any trial takes place. We're calling on all peace and human rights activists in Ireland and internationally to campaign not only on behalf of Ken Mayers and Tara Kauf, but more important, on behalf of all the innocent people being killed and injured by U.S. illegal wars, unquote. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.